prairie wind carried the scent of sage and sorrow as Willow Zanetti stood amidst the broken fence posts of her father's ranch, her calloused hands clutching a tattered deed that felt as fragile as her hopes. At 24, she hadn't expected to bury her father and inherit a struggling cattle operation in the unforgiving Texas territory of 1875. But fate had never bothered to consult her wishes. "Damn you, Pa," she whispered, her voice catching on the dry summer air. "You couldn't leave me something that wasn't falling apart, could you?" The Lazy Z ranch had once been prosperous, but 3 years of drought followed by her father's long illness had left it on the brink of ruin. The cattle were thin, the fences were broken, and the hands had departed one by one for better prospects. All that remained were Willow, her father's ancient foreman Hank, and mountains of debt that threatened to crush what little remained of her family legacy. Willow tucked the deed into her pocket and surveyed the crumbling fence line. She'd need to fix it before nightfall if she wanted to keep the remaining cattle contained. With a determined sigh, she hoisted the heavy toolbox from the ground and set to work, sweat already beading on her forehead beneath the brim of her father's old hat. She was 3 posts into the repair when the sound of hoofbeats approached from the east. Straightening, she shielded her eyes against the late afternoon sun and watched as a lone rider materialized from the haze of heat rising off the plains. The stranger rode tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders outlined against the endless blue sky. As he drew closer, Willow noted the weathered leather of his vest, the worn colt at his hip, and the quiet confidence with which he handled his chestnut gelding. His face was shadowed beneath a dust-covered Stetson, but she could make out a strong jaw darkened by several days' worth of stubble. He reined in about 10 feet from where she stood, removing his hat to reveal hair the color of sun-bleached wheat, and eyes that reminded her of the stormy Texas sky, a mixture of blue and gray that seemed to shift with the light. "Afternoon, madam," he said, his voice carrying the gravelly texture of a man who spent more time with horses than people. "Quinn Sutherland's the name. I'm looking for work." Willow leaned against her hammer, sizing him up. "What kind of work are you qualified for, Mr. Sutherland?" A ghost of a smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Been riding the range since I was 15. Can break horses, drive cattle, and shoot straight, but mostly," he nodded toward her half-finished repairs, "I can mend fences better than most." Willow couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped her. "Fences are the least of my problems, Cowboy." "Sometimes fixing what's broken on the outside is easier than mending what's torn up inside," he replied, his eyes flicking to the black armband still adorning her sleeve. "You a philosopher as well as a ranch hand?" He replaced his hat, adjusting it with practiced ease. "No, madam, just speaking from experience." He dismounted with fluid grace that belied his tall frame. "I can mend fences, not hearts. That's beyond my capabilities." Something in his tone, a hint of old pain carefully buried, struck a chord within Willow. She found herself stepping forward, hand extended. "Willow Zanetti, this was my father's ranch." He took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "Sorry for your loss, Miss Zanetti." "Mrs.," she corrected automatically, then shook her head. "Though I suppose it's Miss again now." At his questioning look, she added, "Widowed. 2 years past?" Understanding darkened his eyes. "Seems we both know something about loss, then." Willow studied him for a long moment before making her decision. "I can offer room, board, and $30 a month. It's less than fair wages, but it's all I can manage right now. And if I can help turn this place around, then we can renegotiate." She gestured to the broken fence. "You can start by finishing what I began here. I need to check on the north pasture before dark." Quinn nodded, shrugging out of his duster. "I'll have this mended by sundown." As Willow turned to leave, something compelled her to look back at the stranger who'd appeared when she needed help the most. "Mr. Sutherland." He glanced up, already kneeling beside the fence post. "You said you can mend fences, not hearts. A reckless courage she hadn't felt since before her husband's death prompted her next words. "Then I'll mend yours." The words hung between them, surprising them both. Quinn's expression shifted, revealing a vulnerability that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "That's a tall order, Mrs. Zanetti," he said quietly. "Some things stay broken for good reason." Willow felt her cheeks flush. I didn't mean to presume. It was just a kindness," he finished for her, "and rare enough that I thank you for it." He turned back to the fence. "But I reckon we'd both be better served if I just fix what can actually be repaired." Nodding stiffly, Willow retreated to her waiting horse, embarrassment burning in her chest. She'd barely met the man and had already overstepped. As she rode toward the north pasture, she silently berated herself for the momentary weakness. She didn't have time for mending hearts, his or her own. The ranch had to come first. But as she crested the rise that overlooked her land, she couldn't help but glance back at the solitary figure working diligently at the fence line, and wonder what had broken Quinn Sutherland so thoroughly that he believed himself beyond repair. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm as predictable as the sunrise. Quinn proved himself to be everything he'd claimed and more. He rose before dawn each day, working tirelessly from first light until well after dusk. The broken fences were mended, the barn roof repaired, and the cattle rounded up from the far corners of the property where they'd wandered through the broken boundary lines. Willow found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the way his shoulders bunched as he lifted heavy posts, the gentle manner in which he handled the horses, the rare smile that transformed his face on the occasions when old Hank managed to draw him into conversation over dinner. One evening in late August, she found him on the front porch after supper, whittling a small piece of pine wood with a pocket knife worn smooth with age and use. "May I join you?" she asked, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He nodded, setting aside his project and accepting the offered cup. "Thank you." Willow settled into the chair beside him, enjoying the cooler evening air after a day of blistering heat. "What are you making?" Quinn picked up the small carving, the beginnings of a horse taking shape from the pale wood. "Just keeping my hands busy, my father taught me. Said idle hands led to trouble." Was he right? A shadow crossed Quinn's face. More than he knew. He turned the carving over in his palm. "You've got good stock here. That bay mare especially. With some selective breeding, you could build back your herd faster than you might think." Willow recognized the deflection, but let him have it. "That's what my father always said, too. He had plans to expand before the war," Quinn ventured. She nodded. "He rode with the Texas cavalry. Came back changed, like so many did." She gazed out at the darkening landscape. "My husband Nathan and I took over more of the operations after that. Then Nathan caught a fever 3 winters back. By the time Pa fell ill last year, I'd already been running things mostly on my own." Quinn was quiet for a long moment. "You've shouldered more than your share of burden, Mrs. Zanetti." "Willow," she corrected softly. "And we all carry our burdens, Mr. Sutherland. Some are just more visible than others." "Quinn," he countered with the ghost of a smile. They sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened around them, the first stars appearing in the vast Texas sky. Something had shifted between them, not dramatic, but a quiet easing of boundaries that had been carefully maintained since his arrival. "There's a cattle auction in Bitter Creek next week," Willow said eventually. "I need to sell off some of the older stock to pay down the bank note." "I noticed a few of your steers are prime for market," Quinn agreed. "Should fetch a decent price. Would you accompany me? Hank's joints won't tolerate the journey and—" She hesitated. "A woman traveling alone tends to invite certain complications." Quinn studied her for a moment, then nodded. "We'll leave at first light Monday." As he stood to take his leave, Willow found herself reaching for his arm. "Quinn?" He paused, looking down at where her fingers rested against his sleeve. "Thank you. Not just for agreeing to go to Bitter Creek, but for everything you've done here. I don't know how I would have managed without your help." Something flickered in his eyes, a warmth that vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Willow. You'd have managed." Perhaps, she conceded, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. Their journey to Bitter Creek took the better part of 2 days, driving 30 head of cattle across the dusty terrain. They made camp the first night beneath a canopy of stars, the cattle settling in a loose circle around them. Quinn built a small fire and prepared a simple meal of beans and salt pork, while Willow laid out their bedrolls on opposite sides of the flames. "Where did you learn to cook?" she asked, accepting the tin plate he offered. Quinn settled across from her, the firelight dancing across his features. "Necessity. Been on my own since I was 18. No family." His expression shuddered. "None living." Willow recognized the pain behind his words. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry." "It was a long time ago," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. They ate in silence for a while, the crackling fire and lowing cattle the only sounds in the vast darkness surrounding them. Eventually, Quinn spoke again. "My parents had a small spread near the Brazos. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, free and clear." He stared into the flames. "When the war came, my father and older brother joined up with the Texas cavalry. Neither came home." Willow set aside her plate. "And your mother?" "Tried to keep the place going, but it was too much. She took sick the winter of '64. His voice grew distant. "I was 15 when I buried her next to the empty graves we dug for Pa and my brother James." "What happened to your land?" His jaw tightened. "Taxes, bank loans, take your pick. By the time I turned 18, there was nothing left to fight for." He looked up, meeting her eyes across the fire. "That's the thing about land, Willow. It remembers who it belongs to, long after people forget." "Is that why you've been drifting? Looking for somewhere that remembers you?" Quinn's smile was tinged with sadness. "Maybe I've been avoiding places that remind me of what I've lost." The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep within Willow. "After Nathan died, I considered selling everything and starting fresh somewhere else, somewhere without memories." "Why didn't you?" "Because running from pain doesn't heal it. It just gives it room to grow." She gazed up at the stars. "And because the Lazy Z is more than land to me. It's my father's legacy, my husband's dreams, my future." Quinn studied her for a long moment. "You've got grit, Willow Zanetti. More than most men I've known." She laughed softly. "Is that a compliment or an observation?" "Both," he said, his expression serious. "It takes courage to stay and rebuild when it would be easier to walk away." Their eyes held across the fire, and Willow felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years, a quickening of her pulse, a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames between them. "We should get some rest," Quinn said finally, breaking the moment. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As Willow settled into her bedroll, she found herself watching Quinn's silhouette against the starlit sky. He sat with his back against his saddle, rifle across his knees, keeping watch over their small camp. In that moment, she realized that despite the short time they'd known each other, she trusted him completely, not just with her safety, but with the future of everything she held dear. The thought should have frightened her, but instead, it filled her with a quiet certainty that somehow everything was going to be all right. The Bitter Creek auction proved more successful than Willow had dared hope. Her cattle fetched top dollar, enough to pay down a significant portion of her banknote and still leave funds for necessary supplies. As they loaded their purchases onto their pack horses, Willow couldn't contain her excitement. "With what we've earned today, we can buy those breeding bulls you suggested, maybe even hire on another hand or two for the fall roundup." Her cheeks were flushed with triumph as she secured the last bundle. "We're going to make it, Quinn. The Lazy Z is going to survive." Quinn's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're going to make it, Willow. Never had any doubt about that." Something in his tone gave her pause. "You say that as if you won't be there to see it." Before he could respond, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. A man stumbled through the bat-wing doors, followed by the sharp crack of a pistol. The man crumpled to the dirt as 3 others emerged behind him, one with a smoking gun still in hand. Quinn stiffened beside her, his hand instinctively moving toward his holster. "Well, I'll be damned," one of the men drawled, his eyes fixed on Quinn. "If it ain't Quinn Sutherland himself." Willow glanced between Quinn and the strangers, confusion giving way to alarm as she noted the tension radiating from Quinn's body. "Lowell," Quinn acknowledged coldly. "Didn't expect to see you this far south." The man named Lowell grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Been tracking you for a while, Sutherland, ever since Eagle Pass." He turned to his companions. "Boys, meet the man who killed our brother Jed." Willow's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Quinn, who hadn't taken his eyes off the three men. "Your brother drew first, Lowell. The marshal ruled it self-defense." "Marshals ain't family," Lowell snarled. "Blood calls for blood." Quinn shifted subtly, positioning himself between Willow and the threat. "This doesn't concern the lady. Let her go about her business." Lowell's gaze flicked to Willow, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Pretty thing. She your woman, Sutherland. Might be fitting if we took her before we took you." Quinn's voice dropped dangerously. "You so much as look at her wrong, and they'll be burying what's left of you in a shoebox." The tension stretched taut between them, the street growing quiet as passers-by sensed the impending violence and cleared away. Willow's heart hammered in her chest as she realized they were seconds away from a shootout. "Quinn," she whispered urgently, "there are 3 of them." "Get on your horse, Willow," he murmured without looking at her. "Ride for the sheriff's office. It's 2 blocks north." "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." His voice was iron. "Now." Lowell's hand twitched toward his gun. "Nobody's going nowhere." What happened next unfolded in a blur of motion. Quinn shoved Willow toward her horse as he drew his Colt with lightning speed. 2 shots cracked almost simultaneously. One of Lowell's companions fell backward with a cry of pain while Quinn grunted, a dark stain spreading across his left shoulder. "Go!" Quinn shouted at Willow, firing again as he dove for cover behind a water trough. Terrified but determined, Willow swung into her saddle and spurred her horse toward the sheriff's office, bullets kicking up dust at her heels. She returned minutes later with the sheriff and 2 deputies, only to find Quinn slumped against the water trough, shirt soaked with blood but his gun still trained on Lowell, who lay writhing in the dirt with a bullet in his thigh. The 3rd man had apparently fled the scene. "You're hurt," Willow gasped, dropping to her knees beside Quinn. His face was ashen, but he managed a weak smile. "Not as bad as it looks." The sheriff assessed the situation quickly. "Get these men to Doc Simmons," he ordered his deputies, "and someone fetch the undertaker for the one by the saloon." He turned to Willow. "Mrs. Zanetti, isn't it? Your friend here going to make it to the doctor's office, or should we bring the doc to him?" Quinn struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Willow. "I can walk. Just need to stop the bleeding." As they made their slow way to the doctor's office, Willow's mind raced with questions. Who was Quinn Sutherland, really? What had happened in Eagle Pass? And most importantly, why hadn't he told her about his past? The town doctor removed the bullet from Quinn's shoulder with practiced efficiency, declaring that the wound, while painful, would heal cleanly if infection could be avoided. He prescribed rest and clean bandages for at least a week, advice that Quinn immediately attempted to dismiss. "We need to get back to the ranch," he insisted, as Willow helped him into his shirt the following morning. The cattle can wait," Willow cut him off firmly. "I've arranged rooms for us at the hotel until you're fit to travel." Quinn started to protest, then winced as the movement pulled at his stitches. "Willow, I can't ask you to—" "You didn't ask, I decided." She buttoned his shirt with careful fingers, trying to ignore the warmth of his skin beneath the fabric. "Besides, there are things we need to discuss." His expression closed. "About yesterday." "About a lot of things." She stepped back, her hands falling to her sides. "Starting with why those men were hunting you, and why you never mentioned you'd killed a man." Quinn sighed, rubbing his hand across his face. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated," she said, crossing her arms. "I deserve to know who I've brought onto my land, into my home." He nodded slowly. "You're right. You do." He gestured to the chair beside the examination table. "You might want to sit down. It's not a short story." As Willow settled into the chair, Quinn began speaking, his voice low and measured. After I lost the family ranch, I drifted. Took work where I could find at cattle drives mostly, some horse breaking. Ended up riding with an outfit out of New Mexico for a while. The foreman was a man named Curtis Blackwell. Mean as a rattler, but fair in his way. His daughter Eliza traveled with the outfit. A shadow crossed his face. She was 17 when I joined up. By the time she turned 18, we were sweet on each other. Planned to marry once we'd saved enough for our own place. Willow felt a twinge of something that might have been jealousy, but she kept her expression neutral. What happened? Jed Lowell happened. Quinn's jaw tightened. He joined the outfit about a year after me. Had his eye on Eliza from the start, wouldn't take no for an answer. One night in Eagle Pass, he cornered her while I was playing cards. When I found them, he trailed off, his eyes distant with memory. He hurt her, Willow guessed softly. Quinn nodded. I got there before the worst could happen. We fought. He drew his gun. I was faster. His hand unconsciously moved to the Colt at his hip. The local marshal ruled it self-defense, but Jed's brothers swore vengeance. I left the outfit the next day. Figured it was safer for everyone if I disappeared. And Eliza, pain flashed across Quinn's features. She married a shopkeeper in Santa Fe last I heard. Better off without a man with a price on his head. So you've been running ever since. Moving on, he corrected. There's a difference. Willow studied him, seeing beyond the capable ranch hand to the wounded man beneath. Is that why you came to the Lazy Z? Just another place to hide until trouble found you again? Quinn met her gaze squarely. At first, yes, but then... He hesitated. Then I met you. Saw how hard you were fighting for your land, for your future. It reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? That some things are worth the risk of staying. The intensity in his eyes made Willow's breath catch. Before she could respond, the door opened and the sheriff entered, hat in hand. Mr. Sutherland, Mrs. Zanetti, he greeted them. Got some news you'll want to hear. We caught the third Lowell brother trying to skip town last night. All three are now cooling their heels in my jail. What happens now? Willow asked. Circuit judge arrives next week. Between the witnesses to yesterday's events and the fact that Eagle Pass wired confirmation of the previous ruling of self-defense, I'd say the Lowell boys are looking at time in Huntsville for attempted murder. Relief washed over Willow. So it's over? The sheriff nodded. Far as the law is concerned. Though I'd keep an eye out for a while if I were you. Lowell clan's got cousins scattered across 3 states. After the sheriff departed, a heavy silence settled between them. Quinn finally broke it. I should have told you from the start. Given you the choice of whether to hire a man with my history. He looked down at his bandaged shoulder. I'll understand if you want me to move on once we're back at the ranch. Willow considered him for a long moment. Is that what you want? To move on? What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me, she said quietly. Quinn's eyes lifted to meet hers, vulnerability plain in their stormy depths. For the first time in years, I've found a place that feels, he searched for the right word, like it could be home. But I won't bring danger to your door, Willow. I can't do that to you. Willow moved to stand before him, her decision already made. The Lazy Z has weathered drought, disease, and debt. I think we can handle a few troublemakers if it comes to that. She placed her hand over his. Stay, Quinn. Help me rebuild. The ranch needs you. She took a breath. I need you. The simple admission cost her more courage than facing down armed men, but as Quinn's fingers tentatively curled around hers, she knew it had been worth it. I'll stay, he said softly, for as long as you'll have me. And in that moment, surrounded by the antiseptic smells of the doctor's office in a dusty Texas town, Willow felt something long dormant begin to blossom in her heart, hope. The journey back to the Lazy Z took 3 days rather than the planned 2, as Quinn's injury necessitated frequent stops and a slower pace. By the time they crested the final ridge overlooking the ranch, the sun was setting, painting the weathered buildings in hues of gold and amber. "Never thought a broken-down ranch could look so good," Quinn remarked as they guided their horses down the slope. Willow smiled, relief evident in her posture. "Home looks different when you've been away, even for a short time." She glanced at him. "How's your shoulder?" "Stiff but healing." He rotated it carefully. "Should be ready for light work by tomorrow." "The doctor said a week of rest," she reminded him. Quinn's mouth quirked. "I've had worse and worked through it." "That doesn't make it wise," Willow countered, but her tone was more fond than scolding. They were greeted at the barn by Hank, whose weathered face creased with concern when he noted Quinn's sling. "What in tarnation happened to you, boy?" As Quinn unsaddled the horses, Willow explained the events in Bitter Creek. The old foreman's expression darkened at the mention of the Lowell brothers. "Bad blood, that family," he muttered, "tangled with their uncle once, years back. Mean as sin, the lot of them." "The sheriff believes they'll be convicted," Willow assured him. Hank spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Law don't always stick to men like that. You'd best keep your rifle loaded for a spell." His words cast a pall over their homecoming, reminding Willow that the danger might not be entirely past. That night, after a quiet supper, she found herself unable to sleep, restlessness driving her to the porch where she'd so often found Quinn in the evenings. Sure enough, he was there, his tall frame silhouetted against the starlit sky. "You should be resting," she admonished softly as she joined him. Quinn glanced at her, a half-smile playing on his lips. "Could say the same to you." "Couldn't sleep." She leaned against the railing beside him. "Too many thoughts." "About the Lowells?" "Partly." She hesitated. "Quinn, if you're staying because you feel obligated—" "I'm not," he interrupted firmly. "I'm staying because I want to. Because for the first time in years, I've found something worth the risk." Willow turned to face him fully. "What changed your mind? In Bitter Creek, you were ready to leave to keep me safe." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "When I was bleeding out against that water trough, all I could think was how much I regretted not telling you." He trailed off, seeming to search for the right words. "Telling me what?" Willow prompted, her heart quickening. "How much you've come to mean to me," he said finally, meeting her eyes. "How watching you fight for this place has reminded me what it means to have something worth fighting for." The admission hung between them, honest and raw. Willow felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble. "I was so angry when Nathan died," she whispered. "Angry at him for leaving me, angry at God for taking him. I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like that again." Quinn's hand found hers in the darkness. "Grief and love are two sides of the same coin, Willow. Can't have one without risking the other. Is that why you shut yourself off after Eliza? To avoid the pain?" His fingers tightened around hers. "Maybe. Or maybe I just hadn't found something worth the risk until now." The implication of his words made Willow's breath catch. She looked up into his face, shadowed in the dim light of the porch lantern, and saw the same longing she felt reflected in his eyes. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Quinn lowered his head until his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning a beginning rather than a demand. When they parted, Willow found herself leaning into him, her hands resting against the solid warmth of his chest. "I should turn in," she murmured, though she made no move to step away. "Morning comes early," Quinn nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "Good night, Willow." As she reached the door, she paused, looking back at him. "Quinn?" "Yes?" "Thank you for staying." His smile in the darkness was worth every hardship she'd endured to reach this moment. "Thank you for giving me a reason to." The weeks that followed took on a dreamlike quality for Willow. With the banknote reduced to a manageable amount and new breeding stock secured, the future of the Lazy Z looked brighter than it had in years. Quinn's wound healed quickly, allowing him to resume his work around the ranch. though Willow insisted he avoid the heaviest tasks until the doctor gave his approval. They settled into a comfortable routine, working side by side during the days and spending evenings on the porch, planning improvements for the ranch and sharing stories of their pasts. The easy friendship that had developed during Quinn's first weeks at the Lazy Z deepened into something more profound, a partnership built on mutual respect and growing affection. By the time the leaves began to turn in late October, Willow knew with certainty that she was falling in love with Quinn Sutherland. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. The memory of losing Nathan still cast a shadow over her heart, but increasingly, that shadow was dispelled by the light of Quinn's presence in her life. One crisp autumn morning, Willow stood at the corral fence, watching as Quinn worked with a spirited 2-year-old colt they had recently purchased. His patience with the animal was remarkable, firm but never harsh, guiding rather than forcing. The colt that had bucked and fought for days was now following Quinn around the enclosure like a devoted puppy. "You've got a gift with horses," she remarked when he joined her at the fence. Quinn stroked the colt's velvety nose. "They're honest creatures, no pretense, no hidden agendas, just looking for clear boundaries and fair treatment." "Not unlike people," Willow observed. "Some people," Quinn amended with a wry smile, "others are more complicated." "Like you?" she teased gently. His expression softened as he looked at her. "Like us." Before Willow could respond, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. 3 men on horseback were coming up the main road toward the ranch house. Quinn's hand instinctively moved toward his gun as he stepped slightly in front of Willow. "Expecting visitors?" She shook her head, squinting against the morning sun. "That's Burton Edwards in the lead. He owns the double bar spread to the north. Don't recognize the others." Quinn relaxed marginally, but remained alert as the riders approached. Burton Edwards was a heavy-set man in his 50s, with a florid complexion and an air of self-importance that set Quinn's teeth on edge immediately. "Mrs. Zanetti," Edwards called as he reined in his horse. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "Mr. Edwards," Willow acknowledged coolly. "What brings you to the Lazy Z?" Edwards dismounted with a grunt, handing his reins to one of his companions. "Business, my dear. Always business." His gaze flicked dismissively over Quinn before returning to Willow. "Might we speak privately?" "Whatever you have to say can be said in front of my foreman," Willow replied, her tone brooking no argument. Edward's smile tightened. "As you wish. I'll be direct then. I've come to make you an offer for your land." Willow's back stiffened. "The Lazy Z isn't for sale." "Now, Mrs. Zanetti, I understand your attachment to your father's property, but let's be practical." Edward spread his hands in a placating gesture. "You're a woman alone trying to run a failing ranch. I'm prepared to offer you a fair price enough to settle in town comfortably, perhaps open a little shop, something more, suitable for a lady of your refinement." Quinn felt Willow bristle beside him and placed a steadying hand at the small of her back. "With respect, Mr. Edwards," she said with forced politeness, "the Lazy Z is not failing. We've reduced our debts, improved our breeding stock, and have contracts for spring delivery that will put us firmly in the black." Edwards' expression hardened. "I admire your optimism, Mrs. Zanetti, but ranching is a man's business. Sooner or later you'll face challenges you can't overcome." "She already has," Quinn interjected, his voice level but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "And she's handled them better than most men I've known." Edward's gaze shifted to Quinn, assessing him with newfound interest. "And you are?" "Quinn Sutherland, foreman of the Lazy Z." "Ah, so you're the drifter she hired," Edward smiled unpleasantly. "Tell me, Sutherland, what's your stake in this? You convince the widow to keep struggling with this patch of dirt while you draw wages, then move on when things get tough?" Quinn took a step forward, but Willow's hand on his arm restrained him. "Mr. Edwards," she said firmly, "I appreciate your offer, but my answer is no. The Lazy Z is not for sale, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to attend to." Edward's face flushed with anger. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Zanetti. A woman has no place running a cattle operation. This woman does, Willow countered. Good day, Mr. Edwards. For a moment, it seemed the rancher might argue further, but something in Willow's determined expression, or perhaps in Quinn's watchful stance, changed his mind. With a curt nod, he remounted his horse. My offer stands until the end of the month, he said stiffly. After that, well, the bank can be less generous when loans come due. As the riders departed, Willow's composure crumbled slightly. The gall of that man. As if I'd sell my father's legacy to that pompous, he won't be the last to try, Quinn warned quietly. Men like Edward see a woman running a ranch and think it's easy pickings. Then they'll learn otherwise. Willow's chin lifted defiantly. The lazy Z stays in the Zanetti family. Quinn studied her face, admiration evident in his gaze. You're something else, Willow Zanetti. Is that a compliment or an observation? She asked, echoing their conversation from months ago. Definitely a compliment. His smile faded as he glanced in the direction Edwards had disappeared. But Edwards concerns me. That comment about the bank. He's on the board of directors, Willow admitted. Has been for years, but our note is current. He can't call it in without cause. Unless he creates one, Quinn murmured. We should be prepared for trouble. Willow nodded, her expression determined. We will be. Together. The word hung between them, a promise and a declaration all at once. Quinn's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. Together, he agreed softly. Burton Edwards proved true to his implied threat. 2 weeks after his visit to the Lazy Z, a letter arrived from the bank informing Willow that due to reassessment of risk factors, her loan was being called for full payment within 30 days. This is outrageous, she fumed, pacing the kitchen while Quinn and Hank exchanged grim looks across the table. The note isn't due for another year, and we've never missed a payment. Edwards is flexing his muscle, Quinn said, scanning the letter again. Hoping to force you into selling to him before the deadline. Hank spat into the coffee can he kept for his tobacco. Ain't legal what he's doing. Maybe not, but it's happening. Willow sank into a chair, the weight of this new challenge evident in the slump of her shoulders. Even with what we've put aside, we're nowhere near having enough to pay off the entire note. Quinn considered their options. We could try another bank. No bank in the county will cross Burton Edwards, Hank growled. Man's got his fingers in every pie from here to Fort Worth. Then we go outside the county, Quinn insisted. I've got contacts in San Antonio from my driving days, men who might be willing to back us. Willow looked up sharply. Us? Quinn met her gaze steadily. Us, if you'll have me as a partner, not just a foreman. The offer hung in the air between them, its implications extending far beyond business. I don't have money to buy in, he continued when she remained silent. But I have experience, connections, and 2 strong hands. I'm offering all 3, for as long as you need them. Willow's eyes searched his face. And if Edwards wins? If we lose the ranch? Then we start over, Quinn said simply. Together. Somewhere else if need be. The certainty in his voice, the absence of doubt that they would face whatever came as a unit, brought tears to Willow's eyes. Without a word, she rose and crossed to where he sat, bending to press her lips to his in a kiss that conveyed everything words could not. Hank cleared his throat awkwardly. Reckon I'll check on them new calves, he muttered, making a hasty exit. When they finally parted, Quinn cradled Willow's face in his hands. Is that a yes? She laughed softly, tears still shining in her eyes. That's a yes, to all of it, Quinn Sutherland, every part. The following day, Quinn rode for San Antonio while Willow traveled to the county seat to consult with a lawyer about the legality of the bank's actions. Both returned with mixed news. The bank's within its rights according to the fine print, Willow reported grimly as they sat before the fire that evening. But the lawyer thinks we have grounds to challenge the risk factors they're citing. It would buy us time, if nothing else. Quinn nodded thoughtfully. My contact in San Antonio is interested, but wants to see the operation before committing. He'll be here week after next. That's cutting it close to the deadline, Willow worried. We've got one more option, Quinn said, pulling a folded paper from his vest pocket. Came across this in town. Territorial armies buying cavalry remounts paying top dollar for quality stock. Willow examined the notice. They want delivery in Abilene in 2 weeks. We've got a dozen horses that would meet their standards, including that black gelding and the bay mare. Quinn leaned forward. It would mean a hard drive and leaving the ranch short-staffed while we're gone. But the price they're offering would cover nearly half the note. Determination settled over Willow's features. Then we do it. All of it the legal challenge, your San Antonio investor, and the horse sale. Edwards won't get the Lazy Z without the fight of his life. Quinn smiled, a fierce pride lighting his eyes. That's my girl. The words, spoken with such casual certainty, warmed Willow to her core. In that moment, she knew that whatever happened with the ranch, whether they saved it or lost everything she had already found, something far more precious than land or cattle. She had found her partner, her equal, her home. The drive to Abilene was grueling, a test of endurance for both horses and handlers. Quinn and Willow, along with a young cowhand named Toby they'd hired temporarily, pushed through difficult terrain and unpredictable weather to deliver their remounts on schedule. Their efforts were rewarded with an excellent price, the Army quartermaster so impressed with the quality of their stock that he expressed interest in future purchases. This could become a regular part of our business, Willow remarked as they rode for home, their saddlebags heavy with payment. Breeding specifically for cavalry needs. Quinn nodded, considering the possibilities. It's good, steady income. Military always needs mounts, war, or peace. Something to discuss with your investor, she agreed. They returned to the Lazy Z with renewed hope, only to find Hank waiting with troubling news. During their absence, several sections of fence had been cut and a small herd of cattle had gone missing. Found tracks leading toward Double Bar land, the old foreman reported grimly. But they disappeared at the creek bed. Whoever did it knew how to cover their trail. Quinn's expression darkened. Edwards. Can't prove it, Hank cautioned. And without proof. We focus on what we can control, Willow decided after a moment of frustrated silence. The investor arrives tomorrow. We need to present the ranch at its best. The meeting with Harold Winters, Quinn's San Antonio contact, went better than they dared hope. A shrewd businessman with extensive cattle interests throughout Texas, Winters spent 2 days thoroughly examining every aspect of the Lazy Z's operations. He was particularly impressed with their breeding plans and the cavalry remount program. You've built something special here, Mrs. Zanetti, he told Willow as they concluded their tour. Good bloodlines, excellent water rights, and strategic position for both the Kansas and New Orleans markets. Thank you, Mr. Winters, Willow replied. But will you help us keep it? The investor stroked his beard thoughtfully. I'm prepared to offer a partnership arrangement. My capital for a 20% interest in the operation, with first right of refusal should you ever decide to sell. Quinn and Willow exchanged glances, silently conferring. We'd need to review the specifics, Quinn said carefully, but in principle, we're interested. Winters smiled, extending his hand. Have your lawyer draw up the paperwork. I'll return in 1 week with the funds to satisfy your banknote. After he departed, Willow sagged against Quinn in relief. We did it. We actually did it. He wrapped his arms around her, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Never doubted you for a minute, Willow. Us, she corrected, looking up at him. You're as much a part of this as I am, Quinn. The Lazy Z wouldn't have survived without you. His eyes softened as he gazed down at her. I want to build something with you, Willow. Something that lasts. We already are, she whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. Later that night, as moonlight spilled through the bedroom window, Willow lay in Quinn's arms, her head pillowed on his chest. Their lovemaking had been both tender and urgent, a celebration of their triumph over adversity, and an affirmation of the bond that had grown between them. What are you thinking? Quinn murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Willow smiled against his skin. That I'm happier than I've been in a very long time. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. When you rode up that day, offering to mend my fences, I never imagined that I'd steal your heart, he teased gently. That you'd help me find it again, she corrected. After Nathan died, I thought that part of me was gone forever. Quinn brushed a strand of hair from her face, his expression tender. Remember what I told you that first day? I can mend fences, not hearts. And I said I'd mend yours, Willow whispered. You did, he acknowledged softly, in ways I never thought possible. Willow laid her palm against his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her fingers. We mended each other, I think. His hand covered hers, pressing it more firmly against him. Marry me, Willow. The proposal, simple and direct, hung in the air between them. Willow's breath caught as she searched his face in the silvery moonlight. Are you sure? The ranch, our partnership, it's all so new. We could wait, give ourselves time to... I've never been more sure of anything, Quinn interrupted gently. I love you, Willow Zanetti. I want to build a life with you not as your foreman or your business partner, but as your husband, if you'll have me. Tears welled in Willow's eyes, spilling onto her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll have you, Quinn Sutherland, today and all my tomorrows. He kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and passion that sealed their commitment as surely as any vows spoken before a preacher. When they finally parted, Willow nestled against him, contentment washing over her in gentle waves. What do you think your father would say? Quinn asked after a while, his voice thoughtful in the darkness. Willow smiled, remembering her father's weathered face and kind eyes. He'd say, I found a good man. A man who understands that land is more than dirt and grass. It's legacy and promise. She traced the line of Quinn's jaw with her fingertip. And he'd be right. The days that followed passed in a blur of activity. With Winters's investment secured and the banknote paid in full, Burton Edwards' attempts to force them into selling were thwarted. The man himself appeared at the Lazy Z the day after their transaction was completed, his face mottled with fury. You think you've won, but this isn't over, he blustered. A woman and a drifter can't run a successful ranch in this territory. You'll fail eventually. And when you do, when we succeed, Quinn interrupted calmly, you'll be welcome to do business with us, Mr. Edwards. Until then, I suggest you focus on your own affairs rather than ours. The implied warning was clear. After Edwards departed, Quinn shared his suspicions about the cut fences and missing cattle with Sheriff Taylor, who promised to investigate, but cautioned that proof might be difficult to obtain. Some battles aren't worth fighting, Willow observed as they watched the sheriff ride away. Edwards is wounded. His pride won't let him come at us directly again. Quinn wasn't entirely convinced, but agreed that their energies were better spent on building their future than dwelling on past grievances. With the immediate threat to the ranch resolved, they turned their attention to planning their wedding, scheduled for the first Saturday in December. The ceremony itself was simple but joyful, held in the small whitewashed church in town. Hank stood up for Quinn, while Martha Peterson, the shopkeeper's wife, and Willow's closest friend, served as her attendant. Harold Winters attended with his wife, both clearly pleased with their investment in the young couple's future. As Willow spoke her vows, she was struck by how far she had come from the desperate young widow struggling to save her father's legacy. The man before her, strong, honorable, and loving, had helped her transform that legacy into something new, a shared dream that honored the past while embracing the future. I now pronounce you man and wife, the preacher declared, beaming at the couple. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Sutherland. Quinn gathered Willow into his arms, his kiss a promise of all that lay ahead. When they turned to face their small gathering of friends and well-wishers, it was as partners in every sense of the word. The celebration continued at the ranch, where tables had been set up in the yard and lanterns hung from tree branches. As twilight deepened into night, Quinn led Willow away from the festivities to the small rise overlooking the ranch buildings. "Happy, Mrs. Sutherland?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist from behind. Willow leaned back against him, savoring the feeling of rightness that surrounded them. "Happier than I ever thought possible." She turned in his embrace to face him. "You gave me back something I thought was lost forever, Quinn. Not just hope for the ranch, but hope for myself." His eyes, reflecting the starlight above, held hers with tender intensity. "We saved each other, Willow. You showed me that running wasn't the answer, that some things are worth staying for, worth fighting for." "Like love," she whispered. "Like love," he agreed, bending to kiss her once more. As they stood together beneath the vast Texas sky, Willow knew with bone-deep certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, drought or flood, prosperity or hardship, they would face them together. The broken pieces of their hearts had been mended, stronger at the joins for having been broken, just as the fences of the Lazy Z had been repaired by Quinn's patient, skilled hands. In the years that followed, the Lazy Z prospered under their joint stewardship. Quinn's expertise with horses and Willow's head for business proved a formidable combination. Their cavalry remount program expanded, bringing steady income and respect throughout the territory. When their first child, a son they named James after Quinn's lost brother, arrived a year after their wedding, their joy was complete. The Lazy Z became known not just for its fine horses and cattle, but as a place where second chances were possible, where drifters could find steady work if they proved themselves willing, where widows and orphans could find support in hard times. The legacy that Willow had fought so desperately to preserve grew into something her father could never have imagined but would have approved of wholeheartedly. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Quinn presented Willow with a hand-carved sign for the ranch gate. Beneath the familiar Lazy Z brand was a new addition: Sutherland and Zanetti, mending fences since 1875. "And hearts," Willow added softly as she traced the carving with her fingers. Quinn smiled, drawing her close. "And hearts," he agreed, "though that was mostly your doing." As twilight settled over the land they both loved, Quinn and Willow Sutherland stood arm in arm, watching their son play with the new foal in the paddock. The ranch that had once teetered on the edge of ruin now thrived, a testament to their shared vision and the love that had given them both the courage to begin again. "No regrets?" Quinn asked, his voice gentle in the gathering dusk. Willow looked up at the man who had ridden into her life when she needed him most, the drifter who had found his home in her heart just as surely as she had found new purpose in his. "Not a single one," she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as the first stars appeared in the Texas sky. "Every fence, every heart, all worth mending." And in that moment, as their evening settled over the land that bore both their names, they were simply two people who had found in each other the courage to love again, to build something lasting from broken pieces, and forge a future brighter than either could have imagined alone.